feel like.
Welcome back to the channel. We're gonna answer the #1 question I receive in my DMs and on the comments, and that is, what pants are these? But that's not actually why we're here. We're here to talk about my grip because apparently I grip the pistol weird. I don't think it's weird, and I'm gonna share with you how I manage the recoil, because I always say, wow, this gun is flat, but it turns out all the guns are flat because I have a solid foundation built with my grip. So let's get into it. We've got my trusty, dusty M&P right here. So leading to your strong hand, it's really important to get that gun as low as possible in your hand, and your hand is high up on that gun. So we have that webbing of your thumb and index finger is high up on the beaver tail, and your middle finger is pressing into the trigger guard. I'll actually show you. I have a callus on my middle finger right here. And if you look at my finger, it's crazy. I don't know if the camera will be able to pick this up, but this is like bumped up for how much shooting that I've done. Yeah, so it's like bumped up from just setting this draw. And when I'm drawing the gun, I'm indexing with that middle finger knuckle, and that's setting my grip in place because I'm leveraging my hand on that gun. The rest of your fingers follow suit underneath, and I'm filling out all of this gap. My fingers are tight together. This is a little controversial compared to what you might find from some other instructors. I grip this with 100% pressure, and I use my support hand with 100% pressure. So I'm just 100, squeezing the gun. Generally speaking, right now, the trend is that you loosen your strong hand so you can keep the dexterity in your trigger finger. And you guys have probably seen it on some videos where I'm shooting other guns and I get locked up on that trigger a little bit. Regardless though, that's what my smooth brain can process when I'm shooting, is just hold the gun. It's the easiest thing to remember. I don't want to think about keeping it loose or changing the pressures in my hand or anything like that. I'm just thinking about squeezing the gun and then where I'm putting pressure onto the gun. So we have our strong hand high and tight on that gun. Our support hand is going to fill in all this real estate on the side here. So I start with my index finger underneath the trigger guard, roll my hand in, and then I clamp down. So my support fingers are pressing into this right under the knuckles of my strong hand, and my palm is actually pressing on this raised area on the back strap here. So I'm putting pressure on this corner, and I'm putting pressure on this corner. And with my hands on this grip, they wrap all the way around. So on my strong hand, I'm going from this corner to that corner, and with my support hand, I'm going from the opposite corner to that. So it's forming an X on that grip, and I'm actually, in my mind, I'm trying to bend this mag well. You can, on Amazon, you can get like a little grip strength calculator. We don't have it with us out here at the range, but I fluctuate between like 160 and 170 pounds per hand. At 240 pounds, we can crack a Glock frame, which is my goal. We're not there yet, and I think 200 pounds crushes an apple, which we're getting close to. I'm thinking about just squeezing down in that X pattern as hard as I can, but the real magic comes into the vice grip. Sorry, my allergies are bugging, so please excuse my leaky eyes and leaky nose, but this part of my palm and this part of my thumb right here, these are my main contact points on my support hand on the back. This is what's building a lot of that recoil control. What that does is that I'm pressing in like this upper knuckle of my thumb, so none of this is in contact with the frame. So when I'm building my grip, my thumb is just kind of hanging out here, and that's where I get a lot of the question is like, what thumb rest are you using? There's no thumb rest. It's just, and even if you look down on the gun, you can actually see a gap from where my thumb is to the frame. So some people like to ride their thumb into it, but I can't get the same type of torque on my wrists if I'm pressing the front part of my thumb. So I'm utilizing this bottom knuckle of my thumb to really torque in on that gun. So I'm putting as much pressure on the fulcrum as the gun as possible. So as this gun's rotating back, I'm trying to add friction to this point right here. So what that is this front pad of my index finger, and then this part of my thumb and my palm on the back side of it. So what that looks like is if my arms are relaxed like this is just normal. I'm holding onto the gun, and then I'm pressing inwards on the top of it like I'm trying to bend a horseshoe flat. I heard that first from Amy 556, where if you had a horseshoe in both hands and you're just trying to bend it flat, that's the same type of pressure you're trying to put on your grip. Now, you don't want your fingers coming off the grip, because I've done this in classes before and students start going like this, and like you're not doing anything with that. Come on. Use some common sense. You hold onto your gun. All fingers stay on the gun while you're shooting. And I'm using that vice grip to keep it in place. So it's a combination of that X pattern, hundo, both hands, and then a vice grip up on that top for the fulcrum to try to keep that friction nice and tight. That is what's going on with the hands. We're gonna shoot a little bit, then we're gonna talk about stance and what's going on with the rest of your body. So one thing I like to check new shooters with when they're evaluating their grip is get nice and close to the target. We're about 3 yards away. I just want them to pick a spot on the target, and I want them to press that nice grip, and they should be able to just stack rounds. Stack rounds in the same exact spot. So we went through a whole mag. We got a little loosey-goosey, a couple top, couple low, but generally speaking, about a finger hole is what we want. And so just a moderate pace shooting, where I'll shoot it with a looser grip now, so you can kind of see a difference of what that might look like. So same pace, just letting the gun recoil. That grip is so bad that I'm crying. It's definitely not my allergies, okay? What's happening with that gun is that it's moving so much that the dot is moving all over this target. And so it's really important to keep a firm grip and that vice locked on the gun so you can keep that pattern nice and tight. Gun's clear, but I like to build my grip and I'll put pressure on the gun. So I'll put pressure on this, the slide here. And this is something you can do at home. Again, gun's dry. And so I'm holding onto the gun. This is me just squeezing, but my wrists aren't locking. You can feel the gun dipping. What I'm doing now is I'm putting more pressure in the joints of my wrist to lock it back. So it's the mind-muscle connection, just like you might have in the gym, but I'm pulling these tendons back to lock it in place. It's different than the squeeze of your gun. It's one of the hardest things to articulate. And as a shooter, you'll have a eureka moment when it just connects and you're like, this is what it feels like. And once you have that moment, it's important to take like a mental snapshot and capture it so you can replicate it. Same with going down, where like if my wrists are loose, if this is simulating recoil, my gun's gonna be jumping. Where if my wrists are locked, there's much less movement on it. If you're with your buddies at your range, you can take the gun and replicate that movement of recoil with your hands. So if I lock my wrist, it's not moving anywhere. So I'm gonna help new shooters at the range. I'll have them build their grip with their gun, and I'll come in front of them and I'll put that pressure back on that gun, and I'll usually see this part of their wrist moving, and I'm like, lock that up, and I'll keep pressure there until they feel that mind-muscle connection with that wrist to lock it, because I can take my wrist now even without a gun and lock it, still have full dexterity of my fingers, but this wrist is locked in place from moving. Your grip is just the start of it though. The rest comes through your body. You need to feel solid. You need to feel like a tank turret with your hands, wrists, forearms, shoulders, everything's connected to make sure that that gun is running flat. Because the next thing is if you have a solid grip and your upper body's relaxed and you're not focused in or your center of gravity is not forward, the next most common thing I see is people lifting up with their gun. Their gun might be flat and their gun might be controlled, but the upper body's not. And you see it a lot with full auto shooters too, where their center of gravity's not right. They don't have a good enough stance on it, and it goes and it takes off towards the sky. Touching on that wrist locking motion, it's gonna be a rotational force rather than a squeezing force. So if you're at home, you can take your thumb and just straighten out your arm and point your thumb straight, and that's gonna help you find that tension in that wrist. And again, we're looking for stiffness in that whole system. I'm thinking of that same muscle engagement of rotating my wrist forward through the bottom of my forearm and pulling my hand down and my wrist forward to lock it into place. Now let's talk about the elbows. Another common thing I see with shooters is that they're locking their elbows completely out. And we want to keep our arms straight, but we don't want to lock our arms. When you're locked out, now you're relying on these joints right here to control that recoil when you have all this extra muscle that's going to help control it. And I know that sounds like a common sense thing, but a lot of people will try to like lock their elbows out or do weird things with their shoulders to try to mitigate that. But the biggest thing is just having tension while being relaxed. It's kind of like in Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
The less you do, the more you do. Let's see it pop up. That's not it at all.
My wrists are locked, my arms are straight, and the last part is my shoulders. Another thing I see is people rolling their shoulders up or forward, but what you want to think about is pulling your shoulders down through your lats. And that's going to create a very stable platform for you, where that gun is returning to that same spot where I shoot, and that dot's just coming right back to the same spot. Think about if you're driving something into the ground and I'm pulling my shoulders down with my lats and I'm relaxed. Everything stays the same, and that group is going to get much and much tighter because you're incorporating your whole body to bring that gun back down to that same level. So we want to see it come up and then stop. What we don't want to see is it come up and then dip down or bounce. And so that's the whole name of the game, and it's something you're going to have to play with. You can, if you have a friend, it helps a lot. Where if you have your grip built, they can pulse on your hands to see if your elbows are moving. But live fire is going to tell you a lot. When I first started shooting, I didn't have access to the same amount of ammo that I do now. And so I'd really try to make it count when I was on the range, where I only had like 100 or 200 rounds for practice. Like build drills helped out a lot. You burn through a lot of ammo, but it tells you a lot about what's going on with your gun. That doesn't mean if you only have 100 rounds just to go do like 12 build drills, call it a day, leave the range, and have your sight going all over the place. Your sight's going to tell you a lot. And so you don't want to necessarily look at your dot if you're a red dot shooter, but you want to be aware of it and like what the dot is moving in that recoil pattern. What I typically see when I'm shooting fast is a streak going up or down. It might go to the left slightly, but it's a uniform pattern where it's coming up, coming down, coming up, coming down, coming up, coming down. So like if you shoot doubles on a target, you want to pick wherever you're aiming, and you shouldn't have any rounds underneath that point that you're aiming on. And so I'll accept anything a little bit above based on how fast we're shooting the gun. All right, so this group right here, this is from the BS that we were doing with the shoulders and stuff, so we don't want to pay attention to this group. This is our doubles group right here. And so I had my dot right about here on the target. We had a couple that were just under where I'm aiming, that's fine. This main group though, it's nice and tight on the target, getting around 20 splits, 18 splits on it. But again, I'm watching my dot come up and settle down to the same spot for that second shot, and I'm trusting my grip, my stance, and my platform to bring that gun back down to the same position. Once you understand how your gun's recoiling and you've mastered the platform that you're mainly training on and using, it's a lot easier to jump to other platforms to figure out where you need to add grip pressure to control that gun. So if you're going to like a subcompact or like a 50 AE Desert Eagle, you can start understanding where that extra input on the gun is needed to help control it. Because not every gun's treated the same, and not every shooter's treated the same either, just based on hand size, body shape, strength, and everything like that. It all gets incorporated into the gun. But no matter who you are, you should be able to eventually keep that gun flat based on an understanding of the recoil pattern on the gun and how that gun cycles. Squeeze the shit out of the gun, bend that horseshoe flat, get a good stance, build a good platform, and you'll have great groups on target, and happy shooting. Hopefully you get better.